Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report. Wherever you get your podcast, you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in, especially when the team is in a slide like this. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. And don't forget that at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday night, Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, and I will be back for our live stream show. A lot of Therapy Tuesday sessions here, folks, and don't know what to tell you. I didn't think they were going to be this great team, but losing two of these last three games has been brutal. And so there's a lot to talk about, the future of this program, and not my program, but their program, and what could be done. You have the trade deadline coming up. Would you start selling off guys or trading assets, whatever? That's something we'll probably discuss as well, because that's the kind of stuff that we're going to get into. It's going to start getting into big picture situations if they don't turn it around real fast, starting Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles. And folks, you don't want to lose at home to the Eagles when your owner is Josh Harris, who owns the Philadelphia 76ers. And here's the other thing. You need to start winning games at home, period, because this is where he entertains people in his suite. You need people to leave that stadium happy for a change. Good Lord. Anyway, so that's just my little spiel on that. Before I get into my film breakdown, and today I'm going to go over a lot, like what went wrong with the offense on Sunday. Was it all just play calling? Well, the film doesn't show that it was just play calling. Of course, that was a part, or the game plan or whatever it is, that was part of it, but it's never that simple. And I think that's what I'm going to look into. And just, there's execution, there's throws, there's this, there's that. And yes, there's some slow to maybe get to some other concepts that did work in the final half. And anyway, so we did talk to Ron Rivera on Monday. A couple of things that I think stood out, just the optimism that he said he feels, because he feels like they do have the quarterback in place in Sam Howell, a guy they can build around. And I'll tell you what, man, you want to build around him, then you're going to have to start drafting and doing better, building that offensive line, because there's so much that starts with that. And it's not just on them, but it is something that they have not done a good job of building here in the 4 years under Rivera. And it's something that continues to hurt them. However, the Giants won a game with a far worse offensive line, and that's where some of the coaching, et cetera, comes in, and where execution comes in. When they're taking guys off other teams' practice squads, and they beat them. And, if you remember my Friday podcast with the predictions, I reminded you of that game in Seattle that Washington had several years ago, where they were down 3 offensive line starters playing on the road in Seattle, and somehow won the game because the defense kept them in the game, and the offense made a couple big plays in the end. And that's really all it takes in this league sometimes. Anyways, but I also think, by the way, Cody Barton has a high ankle sprain, and I told you Sunday that he left the stadium in a walking boot, and Sadiq Charles strained the calf that he'd been nursing with an injury all summer, or a part of the summer in training camp. Don't know how long those guys are going to miss. They were getting MRIs on Monday. We'll learn more about that either on Tuesday or on Wednesday. And then the other thing is, I think it's time. One of the things that I think has to happen here is that Ron Rivera has to pretty much remind these guys that he's the guy, that this is his team. And, you're going to have to, it's not just about the consistent messaging and all that. I think it's about time that you're going to have to do something to kind of snap them back into attention and remind them that you are the guy in charge. And, they've given a lot of power to Eric Bieniemy, but Ron Rivera is still the head coach. And I think on Wednesday, when these guys get back, this is nut cutting time, man. You either get this done now or it's a wrap. And so I think it's going to have to be reminding them that, it just can't be the same old consistent messaging. It's got to be something where, I don't say jolts them, but just kind of bring some passion and fire and intensity to them. And that's what you're going to have to do, because that's the role he has. He's not the OC, he's not the DC, but that is the role he has. And I think he's going to have to bring some of that as they get back to work this week, and just kind of show people, like, where you are at, because there's a lot of frustration in that locker room. They did not think they would be like this either. To be honest, they worked too hard in training camp to be like this, and it's not paying off yet. So you need to get it to pay. You need to kind of keep them going somehow, get them going somehow. And hopefully for them that it translates into better play early in games starting Sunday, because in the Bears game, the Giants game, they played like garbage in the first half of those games. Those were two of the worst first halves I've seen them play in a long, long time. And it came in 3 weeks. Lucky us that we got to witness that. But, so it's just got to be some of the messaging. It just can't be the same old message to the team, to the fans, to anybody, because it's at this point, people, they don't want to hear the same message. They want more of that passion, that intensity to show where you realize that where things are at this juncture, with your program, with everything. So that's what you got to do. Anyway, we'll see what happens when they come back on Wednesday. Anyway, so that's just my little spiel. So let's get into some of the film. And just like I said, I'm going to break it down, and I'm not going over every play. I'm going to try and give you some highlights just to get a feel for it. But I think like one of the things I want to start with is some of the execution along the offensive line, because we all know what's going on up front. It's not always great, and it's not always on them. It just isn't. However, there were a few times where it's clearly a problem. Nick Gates has struggled. He struggled Sunday big time. And I think there's a lot that Nick Gates can add. I think he's got that toughness, the demeanor that really, I think they needed up front. But, you got to get it done. And Sunday, Lawrence for Giants is a damn good defensive lineman. Really, really good. I've always enjoyed watching him because I think he's just, I don't know that he gets enough attention, but he's really, really good. And he took advantage on Sunday. And it wasn't just against Gates, but there was a lot that he was able to do up there. So one of the things is on that, there was a 3rd and 4 late in the first quarter. And it's a 4-man rush. It's a 4-man rush. And Washington, they have Sadiq Charles, and it blocks down to his right. And then and then it was Leonard Williams loops around. It's a 4-man rush. He loops around, just a little stunt with Lawrence inside. So you basically had, but Sadiq Charles is basically, his back is to the gap. So he's blocking all the way inside. And you have 3 guys blocking Lawrence. Meanwhile, Williams loops around untouched, and it's a sack. That can't happen. That's just bad execution. That's not a game plan. That's horrendous execution. That can't happen. And it did. And it happens too often. And, so that's what's one example of just a bad execution. And again, it happened enough in the first half. Again, Gates, a couple, with against Dexter Lawrence a few times, just had some problems. And there's a 5-step drop, 2.63 seconds for a sack for Lawrence. 2.63. That's quick for a defensive lineman, or for interior defensive lineman. And that was just overpowering Nick Gates. On a 3rd and 10, you have Logan Thomas just missed on a chip block of Lawrence who was coming around as a defensive end. And because of that, he gets around Wiley. And that prevents Sam Howell from being able to see Thomas now leaking out into the flat. Now it's a 3rd and 10. If he hits Thomas, I don't know that he's going to pick up a first down, but he's got a shot to at least maybe break a tackle, and then he gets the first down. But you give up the sack, and it's poor execution. Your job on there is to chip, and you didn't get the chip. And he was in a hurry to get out of the pass, but you didn't get the ball anyways because you didn't make the chip. So that kind of stuff was happening a little bit too much. And actually, and again, I mean, there's a lot that Logan Thomas does very well, but that was a particular, and it's funny because early in the year, there were a couple of times I thought he did an excellent job on the chips in that first game against Arizona. But in this game, on that particular play, and this is not to rip on Logan Thomas, but on that particular play, did not get the job done in that particular area. Then there was, and like I said, Lawrence goes right through Andrew Wiley for the problem. And then there's another time you have Brian Robinson there's a play action to him running to his right, and after the fake and Howell steps back, Robinson immediately goes to help the tight end. It was as if that was his assignment. And I'm going to assume that was his assignment because he did it decisively, gets over there, but you got a blitzer coming through the gap between the center and the guard, the guard and right tackle, with the tackle's blocking wide. Or actually it was the tight end was blocking wide. Blitzer comes through inside them. You have the tackles blocking down, and it's a free rusher. And so it's another problem. Now, I don't know that was execution. I don't know if that was just a mistake on someone's part, but it can happen. So something happened there, whether it was Robinson not seeing the pressure coming, or if he simply executed his job and somebody else has got to slide over and get that, or, something got messed up on that. You have Cole Turner, who on another one on the intentional grounding pass, you had him whiffing on a block against Thibodeau. Now, yeah, it's a pass rushing end, but guess what? In this league, tight ends have to at least sometimes engage with a defensive end on various protections. You want to run a 7-man protection, sometimes that happens. And that's what happens here. And it's not even so much that you don't win the block, it's that you just completely miss the block. And so because of that, Howell takes a 3-step drop. He immediately has to get rid of the ball, and it's an intentional grounding penalty because of that. So just the execution. So I'm not putting it all on them by any means, because I think there's other things that I'll tell you, in a few minutes, but there are definitely times where he's like, it's just execution. And why, it's funny because, well, I'll get into these numbers a little bit later, and I'll on some stuff, there are bad throws. There's bad throws. Obviously every game, there's going to be bad throws. Every game, quarterbacks miss throws. Every game, they make bad ones. The best one, I remember watching Tom Brady's, like, how did he missed that throw? He missed that guy, because it happens. But, on the interception, really good play design. Just, Jahan Dotson is breaking open. You just got to get over the top of the corner. And it was a throw that Howell can make quite often. Now on the play, the one thing I wonder is the guys get pushed into his lap, and that happens too often here. And it's hard to tell. Did his arm get hit before he unloads the ball? Does it, that's the one thing I wasn't sure about. And so I don't know if that happened or not, but he wasn't sure either, but it certainly looked like it may have affected the follow through. Maybe his arm does get hit on the follow through. That can affect it as well. Regardless, the good decision, not the best throw, because it was picked off. It's got to get there. You had a 3rd and 5. There's a 6-man rush protection, and you have quick out. Oh, it's a good play design. You have a quick out to Logan Thomas, gets out there quick, gets in the route quick, and just a high throw that he has to jump up for. Can't get it, but the play was there. Now, on that play, Antonio Gibson picks up a linebacker. I believe it was a linebacker coming. And it's, so how, again, it perhaps messes with him a little bit. He's only 6'1", so maybe he's got to throw a little bit higher to get it over there. But bottom line is, it was there. And so, again, it's not to pin the blame here, or here. It's to show you it wasn't as simple as, oh, the game plan was terrible. It's always about there's this, and there's this. And I do think, and I'll get to the game plan stuff in a minute, or at least some of the adjustments that were made or when things were going on. I think, the interception that he had, or near interception that he had, was unbelievably dangerous, and just got lucky because Thibodeau drops a gift. That'll be the easiest pick six he would have ever had in his life. There are a couple of times there were some choices that were, to me, and I'm going to give you some numbers here. So when Terry McLaurin is on the field in one-on-one coverage, I'm looking to go to him. Maybe not every time, but quite often, because he has shown good things happen when you throw to him. I had a hard time with him only getting one target in the first half. So I went back and looked at these stats. Since 2020, when he has one or fewer catches in the first half, Washington is 3-11. When he has 4 catches or more in the first half, they're 7-7-1. Not great, but much better. When he has 2 or fewer targets in the first half, they're 2-10. When he has 5 or more targets in the first half, they're 8-9-1. When he has 2 or 3 catches in the first half, 15-12. 3 or 4 targets in the first half, 15-11. So the point is, get the guy involved early. And what it also shows is when he's involved early, but not the only target early, they're better off. But when you have 1 target, no catches, not acceptable, because, when you have, there are times where you'll hear McLaurin saying things like, yeah, guys come up to me and say, we need you to make a play, Well, when he's saying that, McLaurin is very smart and very diplomatic. And he talked about this after the game about wanting to get to certain plays earlier, getting to do this earlier, getting to do, some different concepts earlier, the fades. I'll get to that in a minute. So when he's saying that, that says a lot. When your captain is saying that, he's the most respected voice in that locker room, and I don't think it's even close. So when he's saying that, it resonates, even though it's not in a DJ Swearinger, I'm going to rip the coaches kind of way. It's saying a lot, because that's your captain, that's your voice, that's the most respected voice. And if he's saying that, I think you got to understand that there's going to be some frustration behind that for him to even get to that point where he feels like he needs to say something like that. But listen, man, I think we all know when they get the ball to him early in the games, they're just better off. You can't force it. You can't, like the point of even those records. So when you try to go overboard to them, is that the best thing for this offense? And a lot of times this is off the top of my head, it could be that when you're having to go to them a lot, it's because other guys just aren't either available or doing anything, whatever. So the sweet spot is in the period where you get them several catches in the first half or several targets in the first half, but you're also able to spread the ball around and get other guys involved, because I think that's when the offense is moving a little bit better. But the point is, you got to get them involved early, and they did a poor job of that once again on Sunday. And it's not just about him, but when an offense is struggling like they were on Sunday, you have to get your guys the ball. And look, you got my hat up here, right? Ohio State. Well, that team, you have Marvin Harrison. They scheme to get him the ball because they know who's the guy that gets you going. It's Marvin Harrison. Well, McLaurin gets these guys going. You've got to find ways to get him the ball. He did, and it's funny because I know one of the things he wanted more of were fade routes, and I get to this in a minute, but in the first half, there was one time he did run a fade route. It's just that Sam Howell did not go to him on that particular play, but he did run it one time. He just had more success in the second half. So I wish they would take more advantage of for Howell, and that if they take more advantage of when Terry McLaurin is in one-on-one coverage and it's press, I'm going to take my chances that this guy's probably going to win, or he's going to maybe draw a penalty. And if not, I'm still going to take my chances with him. You can't do it every time. And sometimes it can lead to the back shoulder, whatever, but you got to take your shot because he is your guy. And, I think this is one of the things that he talked about, signals too. And I think they need to get to the point where maybe they get a little hand signal. And this is one thing that McLaurin has talked about a lot, wanting to have a relationship with a quarterback where you can kind of flash a signal to him to know that I'm going to do this on this play, or, hey, you put your fist out, whatever. And it means you're running to the back, get a back shoulder. You're going to change the play, whatever, or change your route based on the look, and you're on the same page. And I talked to him last week, and I played the interview on here on the prediction podcast with McLaurin, talking about a couple of plays in Atlanta where they did do that, where that didn't have the hand signals, but they adjusted on the fly because they saw the same thing. And that did not happen the other day enough. In fact, on the last series, if you remember the throw to Terry in the end zone, on that play, McLaurin was expecting just going to run into Banks, who was in the end zone, and turn and get a little back shoulder. And Howell reads it as a throw to the corner, and that's what he threw. And, Howell is throwing the ball. He's not waiting for McLaurin to get open. He is going to throw him open. And the anticipation, and they were just not on the same page. Is that something where if you can develop those hand signals as you get more and more time together, can you get to that point where okay, you just kind of put your fist down and it's going to be a corner route. You do whatever it is. And just to get on that same page, because that was a play where if he throws a back shoulder, it may be a touchdown. If Terry runs the corner, it's probably a touchdown. And I guess the kicker on that play is you have Samuel on the other side. running a little similar route to what he scored on against Atlanta. Maybe he scores, but he probably gets the first down regardless. Anyway, that's neither here nor there because you make a quick decision there and you go. But the point is, you need to get the ball more to McLaurin, and some of that is on the play calling, and some of that is on how, because there are a couple of times where he has him one-on-one on the side, on the outside, and he's going to go somewhere else. And it's not just about McLaurin, but that's the guy I'm going to take my shot with. So one of the things on the game plan too, and just before I get into some of the things, and they had, let's see what they have. They use a 7-man protection. It was the most 7-man protections they used in the game all season. I think it was 14 times. And on those 7-man protections, Howell was 8 for 13 with 82 yards, 1 sack. When they had 5 or 6-man protections, he was 14 for 29, 115 yards, 5 sacks. The Giants blitzed 18 times when they were in 5 or 6-man protection, and only 10 times in 7-man. Now, 10, that's a lot given the percentage, because there's actually more, the percentage was higher with the 7-man, but that's why they're using the 7-man, because they know it's coming. There was also one time where they went to empty and they motioned out of there. And as soon as they motioned out of the empty, you saw the Giants linebackers reacting like it was time to feast. But it was, remember, they had one of the linebackers they signaled, and they just basically was a signal to blitz. And that's sometimes just an automatic blitz call for certain defenses. When you go to empty, the Giants did it, and it was a problem. And this is one where, again, get on that same page, because on that play, it actually, I think Howell reads it right. He's got a free rusher coming. He's got to take care of that. The problem that I had on this particular play is Bates is the guy he's going to, but he runs a little in and out, right? And I almost wonder if you get to that advanced stage, I don't know how advanced it is, but should that have been one where instead of doing in and out, you just break out? Because I don't know that because he breaks inside and comes back out, it didn't look like he had enough time to get the ball to Bates because of that. In fact, he didn't. So that was one where I wonder if that's a little adjustment, like if they're coming like that, I don't have time to do this. I've got to go right to the out and just take my chances, because that's where it's going to be. But anyway, as far as the plan, I just discussed the protection. One of the problems I have is that this team only runs the ball 32.5% of the time. That's not very good. Now, it's not just about, like, I'm not a huge believer in it's got to be, this 50-50. I've never believed that, because I just don't think that that's what true balance is. True balance is different kinds of pass calls, different kinds of run calls, run fits, right? To me, the problem is they don't run the ball more efficiently. I think, are there changes you can make there? Well, like I said, I brought up Chris Rodriguez's name a couple of times. He ran the ball pretty well at times, and I think he runs with some power and he runs with some good vision. But it's not like Robinson was bad. I mean, he had one of his, he had the nice touchdown run. It's only 4 yards, but it's a good run. It was a good design, and it was one where you actually had some run gaps. And that's one of the problems when you watch these run fits or the run game. It's a lot of times like where, it's a little bit muddled, right? And sometimes it's like they'd have some 5-yard runs, like, okay, it's a 5-yard run. Then you watch it, and it's like it's one guy bowling forward for 4 more yards after first contact. So it's not like it's either schemed up great or blocked great. And sometimes, like I said, I mean, one of the problems the last couple of years with Scott Turner was but the run game didn't seem to be designed well. And you have to wonder how this one is as well, because it has not been effective. And that's, it's not the number of runs, it's the effectiveness of it. And, would be good to call a few more runs just to, it's always like, oh, take off some of the pressure off Howell. Well, you can also build in some easy throws for him. And they started to do that in the second half. That's another way to take off pressure and still move the ball, because he can't, he does have a good arm. And the one thing that did surprise me going back to the runs is during training camp, it's looked like one of the things the line did pretty well at times was run block. And we're just not seeing that enough. But again, I don't know that it's always on them. Is it what's the run game design? How effective is it? Are you creating the gaps? You see other teams create maybe some better gaps in cutback lanes for their backs. Sometimes it's on the backs to be just a little bit more patient. I think that's a big thing with Brian Robinson still. He's adjusting to, it's a lot of gun runs. Can you be as effective out of that? Can you be as diverse with your runs out of that? I think those are all questions that have to be asked. You know why? Because it ain't working. So not just the run game, but the offense in general. Now, so I'm going to go back and it's been 7 games. I felt like this offense would take time to adapt to this offense, to this system, because it always takes time, especially when you have a young quarterback. And then when you have a line that is kind of pieced together and is not a great line, but I do believe that that group is good enough to win with in the right setting, right? And sometimes that could be with a veteran quarterback who knows, boom, boom, you're going, like you get a Brady, a really good veteran quarterback who knows where he's going right away, et cetera. You have a young quarterback who's growing, which means he needs more help from his front, and he needs them to be good with the pickups and the slides and the protection calls, et cetera, for it to maximize what he can do. So that way, when he's hitting his 5-step drops, like most of these sacks, it's hard to say that, oh, these are all on Howell today. I didn't see that way. I haven't broken it down just by whose fault it is, but I don't think there are a few times where, again, missed blitz pickup. And on one of them where, again, I brought up the Robinson one. I think there was a third down, or the one with Logan. Yeah, there's 3rd down and 10. Well, you have 3 guys that are all downfield. They're not even looking back yet because they're deep routes. And so you need good protection. And so what's he supposed to do? So those are all things that are going on. But anyways, getting back to this, again, with the run game, they had a couple runs late where I felt like they were able to create some better lanes, like on the touchdown. I like that a little bit better. But I did ask Ron Rivera about if he's okay, because in the past, what we'd hear on these Mondays after a game like that in the past with Scott Turner, it's like, well, need to get back to what we do. We need to get back to this. We need to get back to that. And it was always, and you knew the next week they were going to run the ball more, and they're probably going to do it early in the game. Or you need to get Terry the ball more, and you're going to get it early in the game. Like, don't be surprised if McLaurin gets 3 targets in the first quarter on Sunday. But that's what would be said. And so I asked him, like, you have said that. Do you feel that way now? And he does not feel that way. So he seems to be okay with how things are, and the adjustments. Did he feel they were too slow? And I don't know that he felt like that was the case necessarily. So, but it is a little bit of a change in thinking for what it was last couple of years. And he's giving Eric Bieniemy a lot of rope here to run what he needs to run and do what he needs to do. But man, you need to start seeing some things pay off. And when, again, I go back to McLaurin's comments, and one thing to keep in mind, again, I'm not laying all, Sunday, it felt like they're just really slow to adjust. And in some cases, I think they were, but I don't think it's quite as damning as I thought it was watching the game and then going back and watching it live and then going back and rewatching. However, when you have a guy like McLaurin who's saying some of the things he did, then there's clearly, you have to worry, you start to think, is there a loss of confidence in what's going on already, or maybe some frustration with what might be perceived as some stubbornness, is that going on? And, so I think that's the thing you have to worry about, because one of the things with Turner, they absolutely lost confidence in his game plan. And so whether or not I can sit here and say, well, it wasn't all the game plan, or the coaches can say that it wasn't all the game plan. Players have to believe that. They have to believe, like, you know what, this is there. Oh, that is there. If we just do this, then this is there, right? They have to believe, they have to have trust and faith in what you're doing. And, you can sit there until you're blue in the face and tell them, I'm telling you, this is going to work. If they don't believe it, then, then it's hard to overcome that. And for them to believe it, they have to see more consistency from it. And anyways, so, but I say all that because in the first half there, again, I pointed out some of those things were just poor execution, a missed throw, something like that. Now, in the second half, there were some more fades, some more crossers. There was the mesh concept that worked. I think I told you that Terry McLaurin ran one fade in the first half. Well, the first fade to him that was completed, that was thrown, was 106 with 106 left in the third quarter. So, and the kicker of this is Sam Howell throws a really good fade ball. I mean, it's a really good fade ball. It was on this one, it's you take a couple steps, 1.78 seconds, and that ball was out. So in 1.78. So that's what you want. A little bit later, a 5-step fade, and it was, let's see, it was seven-man pass pro. So he could take 5 steps, 1.81 seconds, and the ball is out. That's how you avoid sacks, is by doing that. And that's what they started to do. I thought, like I said, I still think there was, I would like to have seen more of this in the first half. You had the mesh on a 2nd and 10 that it was with McLaurin and Logan Thomas. Thomas gets it, 13-yard gain. You had more sprint rollouts in the second half, and a couple half rollouts in the second half. You had, there was one to Jahan Dotson for an 8-yard gain. And there was also a little bit of a quote unquote pick play with Thomas. And I think it was with, I can't remember which receiver was, but it worked. And then there was on the 4th down and 1, you had McLaurin go to run almost like a fake pick. And then it freezes Deonte Banks, the corner who's covering McLaurin, who then it's not quite a pick and roll, but it's almost a little bit like that, where you go to set the pick and you just get to the middle and he's open for it. But it's a good concept, good design. But I thought like there was some of that stuff was missing in the first half, and you can't run all that stuff. You got to convert and got to get, et cetera. But like some of the crossers, giving them some easier targets on, and some better, clearer answers on some of these protections when it holds up. And if it doesn't, if it's the execution, you can say, listen, we gave you the answer, but the protection has to hold up, or you've got to see this. And there are a couple of times that was the case. But again, other times, you need to get that ball to McLaurin early. That's on you. That's partly on you. And I know some of it's just where the defense goes, but this is where you need that freedom. Like, okay, you get to the line, McLaurin's got a one-on-one. Then I think I've made my point on that. So, so there was adjustments in that second half. There were, there was more. It looked like some different route concepts that worked to get them the ball, and they actually moved the ball a lot better in the second half than they did in the first. They just didn't convert in the red zone when they needed to on the 2 occasions. And the kicker of that is, on that last play, it was a hell of a job by Howell getting out of that sack. I mean, I don't know how he was missed, to be honest, because there was a clean free rusher and he just ducks under and somehow gets out of it, because you're thinking it's a sack. And when I'm watching it again, I'm like, how does he get out of that? And he throws a catchable ball to Dotson, but not an on target ball. So it's one where, you're running to your right and you got to reach back like that. It's not an easy catch, but I know Dotson feels he should have had it. And it is a catch that he would make a lot. So you have to say that he should have had it. But, the other part of that is, in the end zone, Logan Thomas is wide open. Now it's back to the middle. And I don't know that Howell would have seen him at that point, because you look up and he made the right decision. The throw was just a little bit off and it was dropped. So I can't, I guess the good part is you did have a couple guys open the end zone. They were free, but you still made a good decision because the ball was there, and you got to hang on. Tough catch, but you got to hang on to it. And if he also hits him if he's able to hit him a little bit more inside or to his outside shoulder, I should say. So it would have been his right shoulder, then it's going to lead him into a touchdown. But it's also, you're under duress, you're moving on the run. I'm not going to quibble over that, but so it wasn't a perfect ball. However, it was a ball that Dotson and would say he should have caught. Howell says he should have made a better throw, and they're both right, because it could have been a better throw, but it still really should have been caught. So that's the unfortunate part that we're looking at. I think if you get into overtime, I think this team wins. But you know what? They didn't get into overtime and they didn't win. And now they're in a hell of a hole. And it's only at 3-4. I mean, they're clearly still in the playoff race, because there's so much time left that, who isn't, except for Carolina. So they're still in that race. But man, you've got to play better than this. You just have to. And offensively, the execution has been really bad. And it's why I go back, to some draft stuff. Like, I really wish they had taken another lineman in that that who is going to help him this year. Now Stromberg he did end up going in for Sadiq Charles, and a couple of times I saw that he had one rush where he had a problem, but I also felt like one thing I really like about him is I think he plays with great awareness. And there were a couple of times where he blocks down and they send a stun around him, and he's got the awareness. And at one time he knocked the guy off stride because he plays with good awareness. I saw that this summer. That's one thing he does well. I don't know who's going to go in there. Chris Paul has been next on the depth chart, but we'll see what they do there. And, the other thing is, like, if you want to, I don't know if they're going to make any kind of changes. Tyler Larson has done a good job at center over the last couple of years as a backup. Would they go with him, or are you content with Nick Gates? Do you do something to try and jolt it, shake it up a little bit just because? But I don't know that that's the answer. I don't know. I think part of the answer, I say, is you got to execute better, but you also, you have to adjust sooner to what you're doing. And there's no doubt with that, but you can't, I can't sit here and say it was just on the coaches. I can't sit here and say it was just on the O-line. And I'm not going to sit here and say it was just on Howell. I think they all contributed to it and the other thing is, I thought like Wink Martindale was a step ahead. I think he was definitely a step ahead at times. And I got some examples of that where, there was, man, I forgot about this. So there were a couple of times where just like on some overloads, right? And you'd have, they'd have max protection, two receivers going out, but they'd have like the corners underneath and you have safeties over the top, and it would be a wrap. And it was, so like they had a hard time with those situations. They had a 7-man front, still getting an overload with 55 pressure. He goes from the B gap on the left side to the A gap on the right side, and nobody's there, and he comes clean. But it's a 7-man protection, and he still comes clean. So I think that's something that has been that's something that you have to do better with that. You have to, and that is hold on, I'm just writing something down here on that's something that I have to be better at. There was a 2nd 9, there was a sack. There was a play. I already talked about that one. So there were a few times where I felt like Wink Martindale was just ahead of where they wanted to be. And again, the empty set sack was another example where as soon as they motioned to get to empty, it was an automatic blitz call, and the Giants executed it very well. And I think that was also contributed to this loss. So anyway, can't have that happen again. This team has too many hard games coming up, and we already know what the big picture deal is. They have, it is what it is, folks. I don't know what to tell you, because you like to sit here and say, a lot of times in the past, I'd say, man, this team has worked too hard to be in this spot, blah, blah, blah. And there have been times I felt like that. I thought during the Marty Schottenheimer year was like that. There was a time during the Joe Gibbs year, in his 2nd year, I felt like that. And I feel like this team worked really hard, but, and even in those teams, like there were issues in each of those years, and they got it corrected. So do you have confidence they can get it corrected? I think we need the proof. We need the proof. So that's where we're at, folks. They got to show it to you, and they got to show it to you starting Sunday. But anyway, that's my wrap up for the film. Hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget, 7:30 Eastern time, Tuesday night, with the voice of the Commanders, Bram Weinstein, and I. Bring your concerns, your frustrations, your questions. We'll chat, we'll talk it out, and hopefully that'll help you. Talk to you next time.